Alrighty, again, welcome. My name is Stephen Swenson. I'm one of the trainers of Secrets of Tax Lien Investing. I've been involved in tax lien and deed investing for over 15 years. And today we're going to be talking about how to pick an investment strategy. I know we have quite a few new students who have never attended one of my trainings before. I want to welcome everyone. I want to welcome students that have participated in some of our trainings in the past. We've got a lot of good information to go over today. Now, as we go throughout the webinar and the training, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask those questions down in the chat, in the question and answer section or the chat section. I'll try to get to as many of the questions as I can. Usually it's not possible for me to get to every one of the questions because we may have 20 or 30 questions and we'd really spend the entire training do it. But I'm just answering those questions. And so as you do have questions, though, go ahead and ask those. I'll get to them as many as I can. And if we're not able to get them answered within the webinar, then just send me that question in email form and we'll go through it and I'll respond to your emails. So let's go ahead and get going with today's tax sale investing webinar. We're going to talk about the 3 ways to invest today. That's live in-person auctions, online auctions, and over-the-counter investing. And then after we get through talking about these 3 strategies, then we're going to actually go and do some live research. We're going to go look at some upcoming auctions. We're going to review some upcoming sales. So we have a lot of information to get done here within the next couple of hours. And so let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to try to get through these slides as quick as possible. That way we have some good time at the end where we can look at some of these upcoming auctions, because there's really some incredible things happening in tax lien and tax deed investing. Well, who is Secrets of Tax Lien Investing? Well, I attended my first tax sale in 1999. I was a real estate agent, a brand new real estate agent, a young real estate agent, and my broker invited me to come out and attend the sale. So he said, hey, there's a tax auction coming on. I had no clue what it was. I said, okay, well, let's go. And he kind of explained to me on the ride over the process behind tax sale investing, how people don't pay their property taxes, they're going to lose their property, it goes up to the auction. And at this time, the real estate market where I lived was just incredibly lucrative. I mean, homeowners would go ahead and list their property and then get 3 offers in, and all those offers were higher than their asking price. I mean, it was just a real incredible time in real estate. And so when I attended the auction and saw properties sell for 20–30% of their value, I was completely blown away. And since that time, completely dedicated myself to learning this strategy, to teaching others, and using myself. In 2007, we established Tax Sale Solutions. And really what we did for over 10 years, we worked directly with some of the largest seminar companies in the country. We provided them home study programs, books for their TV infomercials. We provided them their tax sale list and their training and their seminars, and we provided boot camps for them. So we worked all across the country. We've taught seminars in over a dozen different states, many of the biggest markets, and really have taught over 20,000 students across the country, and also many students from overseas as well, Canada and some of the other places across the country, Europe, Australia. We've taught other investors how to invest in the tax sale market here within the United States. Really, you guys being on the line this morning, being on this call, this is the best time to get started with tax lien and deed investing. What is not started today is never finished tomorrow. And you guys are taking that first step. I mean, this is maybe something that you've done in the past, have thought about, but really you getting started, you being on this call shows that you're interested. And that's really the first step in really making a lucrative business out of tax lien and tax deed investing. So what is a tax lien? Well, a tax lien is a claim against an asset filed by a government taxing authority against a delinquent taxpayer. And there's really 3 types of tax sales. There's tax lien certificates, there's tax deed auctions, and there's tax redemption deeds or redemption deeds. These are the 3 systems that all states will use to auction off their tax sale properties, to sell tax lien certificates. These are the three systems that any state will use. You know, some states will use one. In fact, there's probably about 20 states that do tax lien certificates, you know, 20 states that do tax deeds, and then about 10 states that do some type of redemption deed. And then there's also some states that'll do tax lien certificates and tax deeds, like Florida, but usually they're going to pick one strategy. And, you know, a tax deed state will sell property. A tax lien certificate state will sell tax lien certificates. These are a couple of properties, a couple of deals that we've done recently. The property on the top is a property that we purchased about 2 months ago. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single-family home in Florida. Now, it has a value of about $52,000. We picked it up for about $10,000, just over $10,000, and we're going to be renting this property out for about $900 a month. So this type of property is going to pay itself off within 1 year. The property down below is another single-family home, 3-bedroom, 1-bath. It has a value of about $65,000. We purchased this property for a little bit more. We paid just over $20,000, and we're going to sell this property for $60,000. So there's going to be about a $36,000 profit margin for the second tax property that we purchased. So we actually purchased these properties using an online auction system. We bid online. I had people on the ground there in Florida that went and researched the properties, took pictures of the property, sent it back to me, and then we were able to make a decision on the properties that we're going to bid on, and these are two of the properties that we purchased. These kind of deals are happening all across the country all the time. So there's always somebody out there who's making money in tax lien or tax deed investing, and you know, why not it be you? So let's go through each one of these tax sale investment types just to get familiar with them. So tax lien certificates are the enforcement method used by governments for the collection of property taxes. Tax liens are a lien against real property. Now, tax liens can be offered to investors that pay the delinquent taxes either at a live auction or over the counter. One thing that's changed as well is the opportunity to purchase secondary market tax liens. These are tax liens that have passed their redemption period and are foreclosure ready. And so that's kind of a new strategy that's emerged in addition to the live auction and the over-the-counter. Now, tax lien certificates, they pay an investor a rate of return, and they also give property owners a redemption period to repay the taxes. Also, the tax lien certificate has foreclosure rights. If the lien is not paid back within the redemption period, then the lien holder can foreclose on the property. We can foreclose on the property and become the new property's owner. And so with tax lien certificates, you're primarily earning an interest rate return. Now, there's some strategies that'll increase your chance of getting a property, but usually tax lien certificates, you're going to get paid a high interest rate return. That interest rate return is going to be backed by state law, and it's also more importantly going to be backed by the property itself. If you're purchasing a $3,000 tax lien certificate on a $100,000 piece of property, that $3,000 is backed by that $100,000 piece of property. Your investment is very, very secure. And they're one of the securest investments out there. They're one of the most lucrative investments, and they're really a great way to build wealth. I talk to investors all the time and help investors that are maybe have an old 401k, and they're taking that 401k and they're rolling it over into a self-directed account, and they're using it to purchase tax lien certificates. They were making 2, 3, 4, maybe 5% if they were lucky on their money, and now they're making 16% or 18%. In addition to that, they also have the chance of acquiring a property along the way. So it's really a great investment strategy. I think it's one of the best strategies for earning interest rate returns. With the stock market, you're not guaranteed to make money. In fact, there's a good chance that you could lose money. I had a family member that over a 10-year period, they were invested in some of the very safest stocks available, and they lost half of their retirement because the stock market dropped after 9/11 and some of the problems that happened happened after that. If they were investing in tax lien certificates, they would have not lost a penny, and in fact, they would have been making a better interest rate return than almost any other investment strategy you can find. And when you're looking for a strategy with very, very little risk, you really can't find an investment strategy that has less risk than tax lien certificates. I mean, the worst case scenario is you acquire the property, and if the property is good, then that's a great scenario. So as long as you're not investing into junk tax lien certificates, your investment is incredibly protected. So let's talk about tax deeds. Tax deed states, they have the same objective as tax lien certificate states. They're trying to collect their property taxes. But tax deed states do not sell tax liens on an annual basis, so they're not going to offer up tax liens for sale. What they do is they wait until the redemption period is passed, and then they foreclose on the property. The county will go through this foreclosure process. They're going to offer the property for sale. They're going to create a tax deed, and then they're going to sell that property at the public auction. So really, tax deeds are a form of property deed. When we think of tax deeds, we need to really think of real estate. We're investing into real estate. So you're going to have a different mindset than a tax lien certificate. With the tax lien, chances are you're going to get paid off. You're going to earn your interest rate return. With the tax deed, you're actually acquiring that property. So you need to have an exit strategy in place. You need to know what you're going to do with the property. You need to make sure to do more due diligence because you're going to be acquiring that property. So it's really a whole different mindset than tax lien certificates. It's going to take more work. It's going to take more time. But also you have that opportunity to make lump sum transactions. You have the opportunity to flip property. You have the opportunity to build a residual income through renting properties out. So a completely different strategy than tax lien investing, but also one of the best ways that I have ever come across to acquire real estate. You can purchase tax deeds at a lower price than any other real estate strategy out there. I don't care what anyone else says. I don't care about, other real estate strategies. That's the reason when I started as a brand new real estate agent and a real estate investor, when I was 21 years old, I suddenly fell in love with tax deeds and tax sales. Was because I couldn't see another strategy out there that worked better for acquiring real estate at a cheaper price. So you can acquire real estate for 20%, 30% of its market value, sometimes even lower than that. And then for some properties in higher market areas, it may be a little bit higher than that. But even if you paid 50% of a property, that gives you 50% margin there to turn around and make a profit on it. And so there's really not a better way to acquire real estate than through tax deeds and tax deed auctions. So redemption deeds. Redemption deeds are similar to both tax liens and tax deeds, but they're really a hybrid of both. Redemption deeds are tax deeds with a redemption period. Now, redemption deeds will usually have a shorter redemption period than your normal tax lien certificate. They'll range from 2 months to 2 years. Usually, they're about 6 months to a year. Texas has a 6-month redemption period on all properties except for homestead properties and farmland. They don't want farmers to lose their home in 6 months, and they don't want somebody's to be kicked out of their own house and lose their own house after 6 months. So those are the two exceptions. Any other type of real estate, a secondary home, a rental home, commercial property, land, anything like that has a 6-month redemption period. Georgia has a 1-year redemption period. Now, redemption deeds can include some ownership rights. So that deed holder, that redemption deed holder, may have some type of property rights during that redemption period. And really the most important thing about redemption deeds is they offer a penalty versus an interest rate return. So in Texas, if the property owner pays you back, you're going to get 25% regardless of when that redeems. So if you purchase a nice commercial building lot worth $100,000, and the property owner pays off after 1 month, you make 25% penalty on it, regardless if it's only after 1 month. If it's 6 months, then after that 6-month period, you'll acquire the property. If they pay you pay you back after 5 months, so before that redemption period is out, they're going to still pay 25%. So it's a 25% penalty in Texas regardless of when the property redeems. In Georgia, that would be a 20% penalty. So it's a little bit different. You know, with tax lien certificates, that 18% interest rate or that 16% interest rate is going to be broken up over 12 months. So with 18%, you're earning 1.5% per month. But with redemption deeds, that's really going to be a penalty. So there's a great opportunity to earn a high return on your money. In addition to that, redemption deeds have a higher ownership property rate than a tax lien certificate. You have a better chance of acquiring a property through a redemption deed than you do through a normal tax lien certificate. Okay, so now we're going to talk about picking a strategy. You could purchase tax liens, tax deeds, and really in three ways. First is going to be live auctions. Number 2 is going to be online auctions, and number 3 is going to be over the counter. Go through and got a few questions coming in, and we'll get to them here in a little bit. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a live county auction. This is an auction that you're attending in person. Now, a live in-person auction can be a great opportunity for us as investors to either purchase property, to purchase tax lien certificates. There's many states out there that don't offer online auctions. So attending a live auction in person is really the only way they can invest if they plan on investing within their own state. I live in Utah. We only have one, each county will have one tax sale a year, and that tax sale will be held in the month of May. So, you know, there's really only one opportunity a year to purchase property here locally or in some of the other counties, and that auction happens one time a year. So if I want to purchase Utah tax deeds, the only way to do that is going to be at that time. There's 4 investor profile types that can be used while attending an auction. And because you're on the line tonight, you're going to have access this morning. You're going to have access to our investor profiles and our state profiles. And so these are 4 of the different investor profile types that you can learn about that are going to use the live online auction, live auctions. So these are going to be investors that attend a live auction. Investor profile number 1 is a high yield tax lien certificate investor. Investor profile number 2, a tax deed investor. Investor profile 5, a pre-sale tax deed investor, and investor profile 7 is a redemption deed investor. In Texas, they don't have any online auctions. So if you want to purchase in Texas, you need to essentially attend the auction. Georgia, you know, there's many states out there that don't offer online auctions. And there's really a handful of states that do, and there's more areas in the country and more states and counties that are moving to online auction, but a majority of the states still do a traditional auction that you need to be there to attend in person, except for some of the states that have really been at the forefront of tax sale investing from the investor's point of view. States like Florida, for example, you know, about 80% of tax and certificate auctions in Florida are held online. But their tax deed auctions, maybe there's about 20%, and then the rest of them are held there at the county courthouse. And so for most of us, this is going to be something that we'll be able to take advantage of. You may live in a state that doesn't offer online auctions. And so attending an auction can be a great way for you to participate in tax sale investing. So a live on-site auction is really the oldest and most common method counties use to conduct tax sales. Every state will conduct live auctions. Even in the state of Florida, I talked about how 80% of tax and certificate auctions are now held online. There's still 20% even in that state, which is probably the most progressive, that still hold tax certificates auction at their county courthouse. Now, live county auctions are conducted on tax and certificates, tax deeds, and redemption deeds. Many bidding systems can be used, and the success of the auction really depends on the number of bidders present. That's the one thing about, I guess that's really one of the advantages. I guess it could be a disadvantage in some scenarios, but in most scenarios it's going to be an advantage, is the success of the auction is going to be dictated by the amount of investors there. And usually you're just going to have your local investors. You know, every year I head up and do tax certificates in Wyoming, and every time I'm really the only out of town and especially out of state investor purchasing tax and certificates. You have the same people going back every single year, and so the bidding is going to be limited to by the amount of money that the people have within that auction room. If there's $2 million worth of real estate and there's only $1 million worth of money between the investors, that means that, you know, there's going to be opportunity for over the counters, or that the bidding is going to be less fierce because there's a limited amount of money between the investors. With an online auction, you know, anybody can compete in those. I'm living in Utah, and I can compete and purchase properties in Florida through an online auction without it, you know, actually attending a sale. But if you're looking at a regular auction, you're going to be attending that sale in person. One thing I always recommend is, even if you don't plan on investing, and if there's a live auction taking place near you, attend the sale. I mean, even if you're a tax and certificate investor and you live in a tax deed state, if there's a local auction coming up, attend the sale, because if anything, it's going to be an educational experience. You'll be able to see people bid on properties, bid on tax and certificates, and really have a better idea of how the system works. Because, you know, if you can understand tax deeds, it's going to help you understand tax liens, and vice versa, because a lot of the same strategies are going to be utilized while researching property, while even bidding at the sale. And so if you have an auction taking place in your area, I definitely recommend attending the auction, if anything else, for an educational experience. So what's going to happen on the day of sale? Well, the sale will usually begin in the morning, and then it will continue throughout the day until all tax lien certificates and tax deeds are sold. Usually an auctioneer or a county official will conduct the auction. Registration can be done before or on the day of sale. It really depends on the county's policy. There's some counties that I can just register when I show up that morning. There's other counties or states that make you register beforehand. So it's really just going to depend on the particular county. That's something that, as investors, we're going to want to find out before we attend the auction. We're going to want to go through any pre-auction packets or information they have, any question and answers or PDFs we can find online. So that's something we're going to want to know before we attend the auction. So if they do require pre-registration, we're ready to go once that auction starts taking place. So prior to participating in the auction, all registers are going to be required to all bidders are going to be required to register. For tax lien auctions, the county is going to require you to report any funds earned through the auction to the federal government for tax purposes, so that interest that you've earned. Also, this information will allow the county to create the tax and certificate in your name, create the tax deed in your name, and really have you on file for sending out any notices or information you're going to need to know. So we're all going to register before the auction. Now, each county in the United States is going to use some type of bidding system. This is the system that's going to be used to purchase the properties. There's the premium bidding system. Now, premium bidding system is generally used in tax deeds. There is some states like Colorado that use a premium bidding system for tax and certificates. And so that's a little bit different animal as well. You're going to want to know exactly how far to go up so that you can limit, so that you can be aware of what your interest rate is going to be. But we're not going to get into all that details today. As far as premium bidding, this is really kind of the common auction that you're going to participate in, like an eBay auction, for example. Let's say they start out the bidding at $1, and then whoever's the high bidder is awarded the item on eBay. It's really the same process with premium bidding in tax deeds. It's usually the method that most states and counties will use for tax deed investing. They're going to start that opening bid at the delinquent taxes, penalties, and fees, and whoever is the high bid is the person that acquires the property. I showed you those two properties that we just did recently in Florida. One of them started at about $5,000, and we ended up bidding up to 10, and we acquired the property at 10. The other property started about $12,000, and we bid up to $20,000 to win that property. So you're starting at a certain point. Whoever's the high bidder will acquire the property. There's also bid down the interest rate. This is the method that is commonly used for tax lien certificates. This is where we're going to start at an 18% interest rate, or whatever the interest rate high is, and then we're going to bid down that interest rate until the low bid has been established. So, if we're participating in a tax lien certificate auction between you and me, and they're going to start the bidding at 18%, then I'm willing to accept 775 or 1775. You're willing to accept 1750. I'm willing to accept 1725 interest rate. You're willing to accept 17. I'm willing to accept 1675, and you're willing to accept 1650. We stop there. You're awarded the tax lien certificate. You've bid down the interest rate, and now you've been awarded whatever that low bid is. And so as you purchase tax lien certificates, you're going to have a good idea of how low are you willing to go. Am I willing to go down to 10%? Whatever that interest rate is, you're going to bid down that interest rate at the auction until that low bid is established. Whoever has that low bid is going to be, or high bid, depending on how you look at it, is going to be awarded the tax lien certificate. There's also bid down the ownership. This is used in just really a handful of states. It's really not very popular. We won't get into all the details. We talk about it in our home study program. We go through all the details on how to do it, but it's not something that most of you will come across, and it's really just where you're bidding down the ownership of the property. You accept 99, I accept 98% ownership, and you just bid it down, and you have a certain ownership of the property. With tax lien certificates, usually the tax lien is going to get paid off, so it's not something you need to worry about. But they've even had that with tax deed auctions, and now, it causes a few different problems. So unless you're a seasoned investor, you're probably not going to want to seek out bid down ownership areas, but you can still make a good profit. It's just a little bit different strategy. There's also rotational bidding and random selection. This is similar to the Wyoming auctions that I attend. Essentially, everyone gets a chance, or they're either going to, it's like putting all of the names in a hat and drawing out names, and usually this is going to be used with tax lien certificates. And so maybe they have, let's say it's a small county and they only have 300 tax liens. They're going to draw names out of a hat. That's kind of the old way it's done, but essentially they're going to use some type of software or something where every investor is going to get a chance to purchase the property on that list. And so they'll have their list of 200 tax liens. They're going to say, okay, here's a tax lien for Steve. Do you want to buy this tax lien? I don't necessarily get to pick. I don't get to decide which ones I'm going to bid on. It's really just random selection. But the advantage to these type of tax lien certificates is you're not going to be bidding down the interest rate, and you're not going to be bidding up the price. So I'll get that tax lien certificate at the state statute highest rate. I can either purchase the tax lien or I can pass it on. Now, if I pass it, that doesn't mean that I'm going to get an extra shot until everyone else has had a chance to purchase a tax lien. But usually this is done in areas that are smaller county auctions, smaller populations, and most of the time the tax liens are pretty good. So with this type of scenario, in Wyoming or in Nebraska, they do this. And so a little bit different strategy. Advantage is that you're not going to be bidding down the interest or paying higher on the price. The disadvantage is you can't pick the tax lien certificates. And so you just need to know kind of what each one of those tax liens are, and if it comes up to you, if it's maybe 90% of them you're willing to keep. Maybe there's 10 tax liens or 10% of the tax liens that you don't want anything to do with. So as long as you pick one of those tax liens, or they essentially pick you, you can go ahead and purchase that tax lien, and you'll become the owner of the tax lien certificate. So those are the different primary bidding systems used within the United States. The ones that you're going to come across most often are going to be the premium bid and the bid down the interest rate. Okay, so acceptable forms of payment. Most counties are going to require payment for tax liens or deeds within 24 hours. Most counties are going to require certified funds, bank checks, or cash. For example, in the tax deeds that we purchased in Florida, we paid a deposit before the auction took place. So we deposited some money before the auction took place, and then once the auction has taken place, we were awarded the tax deed. Then within 24 hours, we had to fund them the remaining balance. It's really going to depend on the county. There is some areas out there that'll give you a little bit more time. They need to have the payment within a week, but most scenarios are going to require payment within 24 hours. If not, some of them require payment really at the time of sale. So before the auction finishes, you need to pay for the tax liens or tax deeds that you purchased. Online auctions have a payment system in place that will allow you to pay with a credit or debit card. So that makes it a little bit more convenient if you can pay with a debit card through an online auction. Some counties are going to require you having the payment right there available at the auction. So it's really just going to depend on the strategy that you're using, the county or city, state that you're investing into. But that's something we're going to find out beforehand so that we're ready to go. As we go through and do our due diligence, we're going to find out exactly what the payment method is, how quickly we need to pay, and then make arrangements so that we can do whatever we need to do to participate in the auction. Okay, emotional bidding. This is something I just put in here because I think it's important to talk about. Here's a quote by William James. The emotions aren't always immediately subject to reason, but they are always immediately subject to action. Emotional bidding is something that you're going to want to avoid as a tax lien or tax deed investor. It's really one of the most important things that you want to avoid because an emotional bidder is a bidder that can possibly lose money. I've never seen anyone lose money in tax lien or tax deed investing except for just a handful of scenarios. And in those scenarios, you're always dealing with somebody who's an emotional bidder, somebody who's got their ego involved of the process and ends up paying more for a property than they should, or bids up a property more than they should, or bids against other bidders because they don't want to lose the property. That's just with tax sale investing. It's important that we don't get emotionally attached because there's always going to be another auction. So the unemotional bidder, they perform the proper due diligence. They make sure they research each one of the properties before the auction takes place. If it's a tax deed auction, tax deed auctions are going to take more research than a tax lien certificate. If I can establish value, I can establish it's a good property, then I'm pretty good making an investment on a tax lien certificate. If I'm acquiring the property, then I'm going to want even more details. I'm going to do a comparative market analysis to determine exactly what the property will sell for. I'm going to make sure to research the records and the past information. Now, the unemotional bidder, they're going to identify a preset bidding limit. So they're going to have a limit on each one of the properties that they purchase. They're going to have a limit on the interest rate they're willing to accept. So if they decide, I'm willing to accept 10% or whatever that percentage is, 12% or even 8%, they're going to have that limit established to say, okay, this is what I need to be profitable on this, and this is how low or how high I'm willing to go. Especially important when you're dealing with with tax deed investing or trying to purchase a property. Once you get into the bidding war, and it is a war, as far as not a real war, but it is a war between bidders, and there will be emotion involved. It's impossible to not get somewhat emotionally involved, but the important thing is to have those limits set so that you don't end up paying more than what you planned. If you've set a high bid of $10,000, you don't want to go above that and go to $20,000 because there's a chance you may lose money. And I'm just using random numbers, but it really just applies to whatever that is. Once you've determined this is as high as I can go to make a profit, then you don't want to go higher than that. They're willing to let tax liens and deeds go that go above or below that limit. They avoid bidding wars, and they stick to their game plan. This is what I recommend. This is the reason I teach investors, is to stick to these game plan. Stick to their game plan. Have an idea before they attend the auction. I've told a story before about one chance, or I guess one experience is a better word for it, that I had while attending a tax deed auction. I had done all of the due diligence on every one of the properties in the list before the auction took place. And there was a property that was located in a nice area, and it looked to be a good property on if you were just to look at the address and the value. But I had researched the property, and it was one of those draining ditches, one of those grass runoff ditches. And so there wasn't any value to the property. You couldn't build there. It had an easement on the property. It had really no use. And so there was really no value, even though the county may have said, okay, it has an assessed value of 50 grand or whatever it was. The property had no value. And there was a young couple at the auction that was sitting directly in front of me. And then over at the front on the other side of the room was an older gentleman. And this older gentleman was notorious for attending the auction every year and just bidding on properties. He had bragged that he never lost an auction, which to me was just completely incredible. I mean, he was bragging about losing money, and his pride got in the way, and he would never lose an auction regardless, and he was willing to bid it to whatever it needed to get the property. And I was just like, man, give me some of that money and let's put a better game plan. But that, his ego was wrapped into it. He was an emotional bidder. And this young couple in front of me started bidding and got into a bidding war with this individual, with this older gentleman on this drainage ditch. And I just kept pleading with them, letting them know that I knew what I was talking about and not to bid on this property. And, and I said, hey guys, don't waste your money on this property. It's not worth bidding on. And, the young couple turned around and said to me, well, he knows something about it. He's bidding, so it has to be worth something. And they were, I could tell that they were bidding with really their life savings. They were a young couple. They probably heard about tax sale investing, on a TV infomercial, on a late night infomercial, and they went to the sale just thinking that every property is going to be golden, and this guy knew something that they didn't know. And finally, I just kept pleading with them because I didn't want them to lose their money against this gentleman. And finally, I pleaded with them to give it up, and they ended up bidding. This was actually a scenario where they bid down the ownership of this property. It was a little bit different auction at the time, and they ended up bidding down this ownership to less than 1%, and then they got all the way down to 1%, and both of the bidders still wanted to bid against each other. And so with a bid down the ownership, you just pay whatever the price is, and then you bid down the ownership. So let's say it was a $4,000 tax deed, and I think that's actually about what it was. And they bid down the ownership all the way to 1%. And at that point, neither one of them was willing to back down. They were both emotionally invested. And so they had a little meeting between the tax collectors there because, they said that they wanted to keep going, that they weren't ready to give up now. And so they started bidding 1,000% of 1%. They just started bidding down this until finally I pleaded with them and they let it go. And then he turned around and, the young couple, kid of the young couple was very upset at me because I let him let this property go and went to this other investor for 1/100% of the property. It was completely ridiculous. And then, of course, after he was so mad at me that he went and bid it against him on another property and won a useless property. And I know that was kind of a long story, but it really, kind of details or puts this into perspective as far as being an emotional bidder. You know, the only time I've ever seen anyone lose money in tax sale investing was in that kind of scenario, where they didn't do their education, they didn't do their due diligence, they attended the auction, they got emotionally involved, and they paid more than they should have. As long as we don't do that, you know, we're almost guaranteed to hit home runs. And so there's just a ton of opportunity. The last thing we want to do is get emotional about it. And it's hard not to have fun and you know, be emotional in the experience, but we don't want that emotion to dictate reason, or to let reason go out, you know, out the window, where we let all of the due diligence and the research we have done fly by the way as we get emotionally involved and overpay for property. So what does an emotional bidder do? Well, they don't know what the properties are worth. They haven't done their due diligence. They take property ownership before the bidding begins. Before the auction has even taken place, they already see themselves owning this property. They're ready to own the property. They already feel like they've owned the property before the auction takes place. When you get that emotionally attached to the property, that's where you're going to get more involved and start bidding above what you've set your limit at. They have preset limits. They have no preset limits. So they haven't determined, okay, this is where I'm going to stop. You know, they just go really free willy and just see what happens. And then, of course, they engage in bidding wars with other emotional bidders. You know, it's kind of fun to watch two emotional bidders go at it on a property. You know, it's really quite amusing. I mean, it's sad in some ways because they're, you know, chances are if they get too emotional, they're going to be losing money. But it's amazing to see the egos at work going back and forth, bidding on a property that they should have just let go at after a certain price. If you go in as an unemotional bidder with your bidding limits established, with the research done beforehand, you're going to be a successful tax sale investor. This is really between emotional bidding and useless land or useless unvaluable property. Those are the only two risks that we have to worry about as far as the real big risk. Any of the other risks are small. Those are the two big risks that we have to worry about with tax sale investing, and both of them are easy to overcome. Don't get emotionally involved. Do your research beforehand, you know, with emotional bidding, and then don't bid on no value, no use land or no use properties. Easy. That's the only thing we have to avoid. I mean, there's other things that we can talk about, and we do talk about in other webinars that we need to avoid: environmental land, swampland, but usually that's going to fit within the useless or unvaluable property anyway. And so as long as we avoid those two things, we're going to be successful in tax sale investing. So as far as the live auction, a live auction can be a great way to purchase tax liens or deeds. Every tax sale investor should go to a live auction, if only for the experience. You're going to see how the county conducts its auction. You'll be able to see tax liens and tax deeds purchased and bid on. And so you're going to see people acquire the properties that you had done research on. You're going to see people bid against other, you know, get in bidding wars. You're going to just have a good experience and have an overall experience of the tax sale system by attending one of the auction. Almost every state has some type of auction, and most states are going to have at least some counties that will offer an online auction. So there's really not for most of you, and I would imagine most of you on the line, have some type of opportunity to attend an auction and to participate in an auction. There's a chance that maybe you don't, but most of us do. So if there is an auction taking place within your area, go even if you don't plan on bidding, because you're going to enjoy the experience and it's really going to be educational. And then, of course, if you do, then it's a great way to acquire property. So now we're going to get into online auctions. as we talked about before, many counties are moving to an online auction system. Online auctions are going to be handled by the county, although there are several different companies and software websites that have been developed to replace the traditional auction. Some counties have elected to even develop their own auction systems, but really over the last year or two, many of those counties that had their own auction systems have started using one of the other auction companies. So there's several different companies and software out there. We're going to go through and teach you about most of them, and especially the big ones, and then from there we're going to go through and review some of the different systems that are used. So how do you get started with online auctions? Well, first you're going to register. Now, registration can be done online, and it really just takes a few minutes. You're just going to go through, fill out your basic information, register. Now you're registered for the auction website. Once we've registered, then we're going to do some property research. We're going to research the tax sale list. We're going to research the properties. Once we've researched the properties, we've determined which properties we're interested in, then we're going to bid. And the bidding is going to take place on the online auction website or on another website like bidforassets.com, and we'll kind of explain some of the differences. There's some auction websites that the counties will have their own website completely dedicated to the auction. So they'll, each, like Florida, for example, will have Real Auction or Grant Street Group, and each of those counties are going to have their own website for the tax lien auction. Each website, their own website for the tax deed auction. But then there's other areas like California that will use Bid for Assets, that all of the auction will be done on one website, kind of like eBay, but there's going to be a separate auction for each one of those counties. So it's a little bit different. We're going to go through some of those different steps. But you're going to go ahead and bid online. Once you've bid and the auction is over, you've established that you're a high bidder on one of the properties, then you're going to be awarded the tax lien or deed. Now, some counties are going to provide a pre-auction packet that contains instructions and procedures on how to attend the sale or how to participate in the sale. Most of the counties are going to have an auction web page or website that's completely dedicated to their online auction. They're going to include important information. They're going to have the auction rules. They're going to have any type of tutorials. They're going to have forms. They're going to have the auction list. They may have online lists. They may have links to property records. So going through and reviewing all the information that's available for that particular auction before the auction takes place is going to be crucial, so that you don't make any mistakes, so that you understand their system before the sale. Some counties and auction websites have even included a trial auction that you can participate in and practice before the auction takes place. Like realauction.com has, each state will have its own practice auction. So you can go ahead and practice going through and purchasing tax liens, even though you're not necessarily purchasing them, kind of through a trial mock auction, so you become familiar with the process. Also, many of them will have webinars similar to the one that we're on today before the auction takes place, that goes through and explains how the county uses the auction system and gets you familiar with their system so that you're prepared to bid on at the sale. The last thing you want to do is make a mistake because you didn't understand how to use their system. And so these systems, even if you're not an internet whiz, you can go through these steps. Just by being on register for this call, you have the experience and the skill to participate in an online auction, as long as you go through and understand the basics of how to use the website. Now, secrets of tax lien investing. All of you have either in the past been set up with one of our guest pass, or if you haven't yet, we'll be setting you up a guest pass as a gift of attending the training today. But this is going to give you access to our online auction section and our online auction links. And so all of these auction companies that we're going to talk about today, you don't need to worry about writing them all down, because all of these auctions that are going to be taking place are going to be stored and saved on really a couple different web pages of our website. And so, there's probably about 10 different companies that offer online auctions, instead of trying to go to all 10 of those different companies and see what the auctions are taking place, you can go to one section of Secrets of Tax Lien Investing and see all of the tax lien auctions that are coming up, or see all of the tax deed auctions that are coming up, or seeing which redemption deeds might be available. So you can go to one spot to find all this information versus trying to go back and go, okay, was that a Grant Street Group, was that Real Auction, was that Bid for Assets? All that information is going to be stored in one place on Secrets of Tax Lien Investing. So that's really going to be a huge benefit for you to see not only what auctions are coming up, but then be able to click on any of the links to be directed to the online auction page. So here are some of the online auction providers we're going to go over today. Bid for Assets, RealAuction.com, Grant Street Group, SRI Auctions, and Civic Source. There's also other online auction providers like Tax-Sell Info that does the Michigan auctions. There's a couple of companies that do New York tax deed auctions. And so we're going to go through each one of these and talk about them. Real Auction is probably one of the biggest sources of tax sell websites and tax auction provider. They offer tax lien auctions in Florida, Colorado, Arizona, Illinois, Nebraska, and also in New Jersey. Real Auction will also provide auctions for Florida tax deeds. So these are the primary states that Real Auction currently has accounts with. Each auction is going to have its own website. So here we can see Flagler County. This is the Flagler County tax lien auction website. And then if they have a tax deed sale within that, an online tax deed sale, they'll have their own auction web page as well. We'll go through that in a minute. But you can see here that you can register, you can preview the items for sale, you can purchase county held certificates. Also, over to the left, you're going to have different tabs that you can click on. You can see training, general training information, the tax certificate process. You also have the links down here below. You have the bidding and buying rules that you'll click on. So if you plan on attending one of these auctions, you're going to want to go through and review all this information so that you're prepared for the sale. Also, bidder orientation trainings are held to familiarize bidders with the online tax sale process. So in addition to that, each site will have its own practice site. So if you were to go to realauction.com, it would look somewhat like this with the states that in alphabetical order, and then the counties that they have online auctions for. These practice auctions are held daily throughout the year, so you can go there anytime and participate in one of the practice auctions. We already went through some of the states that Real Auction has their tax lien auctions for. Excuse me. Okay, so the auction websites are going to be listed by state and by county. They're going to have the links that you can click on to directly take you to the online auction. Now, we're going to have any of these auction links available on the website, and so we'll have the real auctions in all of the counties, the states, their auction date information on the website, so you don't have to try to go to each one of these websites and then try to find out when the auctions are coming up. You can just go to one place. So you can see here the registration tab, that's where you're going to click on to register for the auction. To review the sale list, you can go ahead and click on the sale. And then over here to the left-hand side, we have the bidding rules, the training, and also the additional links. So you can see they have a site guided tour, the training dates, and then of course the bidding rules. The bidding rules is going to let you know exactly when the auction opens up, when it ends, and what the deposits are going to be. The process of registration, that's one of the first things you're going to click on is to find out about that auction is click on the bidding rules. In addition to that, Real Auction is going to have tax deed auctions in Florida. Now these Florida tax deed auctions are going to be held monthly, and so not every county will have an auction every single month, but most of the counties will. Some of the counties will have 3 or 4 auctions in just 1 month period. And so there's always online auctions taking place in Florida at one of the different counties. They offer tax deed auctions, and they also offer mortgage foreclosure auctions. Some counties will have their own website completely dedicated to the tax deed sale, and then their own website completely dedicated to the mortgage foreclosure sale. And there's a couple of websites that have one website for both of them. And so we'll go through a little bit of the differences, or I guess pretty much the look is very similar. It's just one auction will only have tax deed auctions, and then they'll have one for their mortgage foreclosure, and there's a few that have them both. And so you'll be able to see, okay, on the 2nd they have a mortgage foreclosure auction, and then on the 5th they have a tax deed auction. So you just click on the tax deed auction and you bid exactly the same way. So it's really, there's nothing really to it. It's just some counties will have an online auction for just tax deeds, just mortgage foreclosures, and there's a couple that have them combined into one website. So you're going to bid on these properties straight from your computer. You're going to have the ability to pull up the property records by reviewing the information that's available in the tax sale list. They're going to have, the tutorials. They're going to have question and answers. They're going to have a lot of information to help you go through this process. And it's really, once you've kind of registered, you've set up an account, you've gone through it once, you're going to understand how to be able to do it. So each one of these counties is going to have their own auction website. Here we can see Indian River. You can see the auction calendar right there. You can register. Now, if we were to go ahead and click on the auction calendar, it's going to pull up a calendar like this. Now, this particular auction we can see has both tax deed auctions and foreclosure auctions. So this would be one that has them both, and you can see where it says tax deed, 41 properties on the 11th, or on the 31st it says 6 foreclosures, 0 tax deeds. So we know which ones are going to be the tax deed auctions because they're going to say there's 41 properties coming up for sale. And so we'd of course click on that date, and then if it says foreclosures, those are going to be your regular mortgage foreclosures. And then, this is really the counties that have them both is really the minority. Most counties will have their own auction website completely dedicated to the tax deed sales, but there's some that don't. So you don't need to get too confused. All you need to do is look for if it says foreclosure or if it says tax deed, and then click on the tax deeds. That's going to take you right in so that you can start reviewing the tax deed list. Now, once we were to click on one of these dates, say we clicked on the 4th, it's going to pull up the list of the tax deed properties. And so the list is going to look very similar to this. We're going to see the opening bid amount. We're going to have the parcel ID. We're going to have the property address. We're also usually going to have an assessed value. And so as we go through and look at that list, we can see that opening bid amount versus the assessed value and determine if it's a property that we're interested in looking at. So if we were looking at this first property and it had opening bid of $9,500 and it had an assessed value of $80,000, and it has an address, well, that may be a property we want to look at because it looks like it has a higher assessed value and it has an address. So we could go ahead and click on the link to pull up the property records. Now, once we click on the link, it's going to go ahead and pull up the property records. Property records are going to look different depending on the county that you're investing into. They're all going to look a little bit different. Some will include photos of the property. Most will include some type of overhead map, but they're all going to have the general information that we need. The owner information, the site address, the legal description, the classification, the property details as far as how many square feet, does it have bedrooms, baths, or if it's land, the size, the value, the assessed value, the tax information. So it's going to have all that information. Even though they're going to look different from county to county, we're going to at least have that basic information to start doing an evaluation on that property. We can see these two particular properties are single family homes. We'd find out what their values is. We could see what the past sell information. So if this one of these homes sold, how much did it sell for? When did it sell? All this information is going to be valuable to us in making a decision on an individual property. Okay, so now we're going to get into bid for assets. Okay, just looking over some of the questions. If you have any questions, go ahead and go to the question and answer section. Here's a great question. If you buy a tax deed in Florida, do you own the property or do you have to wait 2 years to foreclose? In Florida, it's a little bit different. They have both tax liens and tax deeds. So if you buy a tax deed in Florida, you're buying the deed, you're buying the property. If you buy a tax lien certificate, then you have that 2-year period to wait. So what will happen is an investor will purchase a tax lien certificate. They'll have 2-year redemption period. Once that 2-year redemption period is up, they'll go ahead and do what's called a deed application with the county. Which means that they're going to fill out an application. They're going to, and then the county is going to foreclose on that tax lien certificate. The county will foreclose on the tax lien, create a tax deed, put it up for auction. If the property is purchased at the auction, so if I go ahead and purchase the property, you purchase the tax deed property, you are going to become the property's owner. And by purchasing the tax deed, that opening bid amount is going to be the amount that pays off the lien investor. So the lien investor is going to be paid off by our opening bid amount, and he's going or she's going to make their money back plus their interest rate return, and we're going to acquire the property. If nobody bids on the property, then that tax deed will become the owner, the tax and certificate owner. The person that owns the tax and certificate will become the owner of the property if no one bids on the property of the tax deed sale. So with tax deed investing, you're acquiring the property in Florida. You're not going to have any time frame to wait. You've acquired it. Once we purchased these tax deeds last month, they sent us the tax deed in the mail. We received the deed within a week. Now with the tax and certificate, that's where you're going to wait that time frame. So hopefully that helped answer your question. So let's get into bid for assets. This is I like to compare it to the eBay of tax sale investing, because it's all going to be done on this one website. In addition to that, they offer tax sales. They offer all kinds of different services. It's really kind of the eBay for county and city and government. The U.S. Marshal Service will sell different items. I've seen them sell, huge yachts that were owned by some type of drug lords. Or they've sold all kinds of stuff here on Bid for Assets. But in addition to some of those things, they sell tax deeds, and usually these are going to be areas like California is the primary one that uses Bid for Assets. Washington, Idaho has used them. So they're really tax deeds that are offered in the western part of the United States, but then again, Michigan has sold tax deeds here as well. So what we're going to do is, once we've go to Bid for Assets, we're going to go ahead and click on the county tax sales over here on the far left corner. This is where they're going to have the different channels or the different auctions that are taking place. We're going to go ahead and click on county tax sales. Now, once we click on county tax sales, it's going to take us to the county tax sale page. There's going to be an auction calendar over on the right-hand side with the different auctions that are coming up. We can see the different auctions that are coming up, and we can click on any of these auctions to pull up the auction list, and to pull up the individual auction website. So each one of these auctions each one of these counties is going to have their own auction page, and we're going to click on that link to pull up the auction page. So if we're to go ahead and click on one of these auction pages, it's going to go ahead and take us to the county page. Now this page is going to provide us with the information that we need. They're going to have the dates. We can see that the auction starts April 12th, ends April 15th. They're going to tell us how many properties are auctioned. We can see 16, and then the bidding is going to start at 1,150. So we're going to see what the bid starts at. As we continue to scroll down the page, then we're going to have additional information. We're going to see the California law. We're going to see the terms of sale. We're going to see any of the important information about tax sale investing. And then, of course, down here below, we're going to have the property list and Excel and PDF. Then down below that, we're also going to have the online files. And so usually what I'll do is, especially if it's a larger auction, I'll go ahead and download the Excel list, and I'll use the Excel list to really narrow down the list and determine which properties I want to invest into. You can also click on the online files down here below and pull up the individual files. So here's what the online list would look like. It's really not going to contain a lot of information. I mean, it will once you click on the individual properties, but as we look at the list, it's really just going to have the APN number and if it's available. And so that's the reason I pull up the Excel file if it's a large list, because to see what the opening bid is and to see what the property is, you're going to have to click on each one of these. And if the list is 200 properties long, it could take quite a bit of time going through and clicking on each one of the links to see what the opening bid is, to see what the property value is, the assessed value. So the Excel list will usually have a lot more information, so I'll use that to condense the list or the information down and then search the properties that I'm interested in. So once we were to go ahead and click on any one of these properties, it's going to pull up the property information. We're going to see what the minimum bid is, the opening bid, how much the bid increment is. So we can see it's going to start at $100. You have to bid up $100 each time. So the minimum bid is going to start at $3,200. The next bidder will pick, lift their paddle up. In this case, it'll be online auction. I'm willing to pay, $3,300. You're willing to pay $3,400. I'm willing to pay $35,000. You pay $36,000, $37,000, $38,000, $39,000. Till whatever that high bid is established. We can see when the auction starts, when it closes. Then down here below we can see additional information, the address, the acreage. They may have photos of the property. They're going to have any of the information that we need, or at least that basic information, to start doing some due diligence on it. Okay, so next we're going to talk about Grant Street Group. I'm going to go ahead and answer a couple of quick questions. In Florida, what's the difference between a tax deed and a mortgage foreclosure? It's pretty simple. With a tax deed auction, this is the property being auctioned off for delinquent taxes. Somebody didn't pay their taxes. They lost the property. It goes up for the tax deed auction. It gets sold at the tax deed sale. A mortgage foreclosure is somebody who didn't pay their mortgage. So maybe they got a loan on a home. They didn't pay their loan on their home. The bank, doesn't like that. The bank decided, hey, we need to get our money out of this property. This property owner isn't paying us, and they send that auction. They auction off the property. So as you hear about pre-foreclosures, if you hear about foreclosure auctions, any of that, it's usually going to be a mortgage foreclosure sale. Now, with mortgage foreclosures, and the reason, I think you can make money that way, but I think that tax deeds are so much better in so many different ways, because first of all, mortgages is going to be auctioned, or at least is going to be offered through the county, but it's going to be owned by the bank. So the bank wants to get as much money as they can for the property, and many times the reason the person isn't paying their mortgage is because the property may be underwater. The property may be worth more. Usually you're not going to see a mortgage foreclosures start with an opening bid of 20 or 30%. Usually they start at 95% or 90% or 100%. And then in addition to that, with the tax deed auction, going through that tax deed process helps eliminate any other liens. With a mortgage foreclosure, you might have some of those liens that still attach. So if there's a mechanic's lien, that still may be attached even if you purchase it at the mortgage foreclosure sale. With a tax deed auction, any of those liens are going to be erased through the process. And then, of course, the county isn't in the business of making money. They're just in the business of trying to recoup the money that they've lost through people not paying their property taxes. So the bidding is going to start at just that opening bid amount. And so whatever the delinquent taxes are, that's where the bidding is going to start. So that's really the difference between a mortgage foreclosure and a tax deed foreclosure. Is the tax deed is being offered because somebody didn't pay their property taxes. The mortgage auction is going to be, or the mortgage foreclosure is going to be offered because they didn't pay their mortgage, their loan to the bank. Hopefully that'll answer the question for you. What about quiet title action? It's a great question. Really kind of needs to go through quite a bit of detail. And we talk about it in some of our regular webinars, so you can go ahead and participate in some of the regular webinars where we'll get into the details of it. But it's really the process that we're all going to go through, that we should go through after we've purchased a tax deed property. And so it's really just you know, when you purchase a property, you're going to receive what's called a tax deed or a quitclaim deed. You know, to get a mortgage on a property, or you know, you're going to need what's called a warranty deed. And so essentially what a quiet title does is it takes that property from a tax deed and makes it into a warranty deed. You can still sell the property with a quitclaim deed or a tax deed if you don't go through the quiet title process, but to get top dollar for a property, then you're going to want to go through the quiet title process. I mean, it's the process that we're going through right now on those properties that we looked at. And so quiet title is something that you're going to consider as you go into tax deed investing and you do acquire property. You can sell a property without doing quiet title, but it's really quiet title is going to be that way to get the top value for the property. And so we won't go through all the details, but essentially that's what the process is taking that title from a tax deed title or a quitclaim title to a warranty deed title. Essentially, you're taking it before the court. You're saying, okay, here we purchased this property at a tax deed auction. We own the property free and clear now. And then the judge says, okay, you've proved it to me. I can see that you purchased it here at the tax deed auction, and you now have a warranty deed. Once you have that warranty deed, you can get title insurance on the property. You can sell for top dollar. So that's a very quick explanation of what quiet title is. I have a question about, was this webinar recorded in 2012? No, this webinar is live right now. That was just an old screenshot that I had, or a picture of whatever that was. So I just used that as an example. No, this isn't recorded in 2012. This is live, and I'm here this morning with you. So, okay, so let's get into Grant Street Group. Grant Street Group is another source, very, very similar to realauction.com. They're going to offer tax lien auctions in Florida, Arizona, and Maryland. And they're going to each one is going to have their own website, very, very similar to Real Auction. Also, I guess one thing I can add to that is they also have tax deed auctions in California now. They only have a couple of counties, but they have a couple of tax deed auctions they offer in California, and there's one coming up next month where they're auctioning off over 1,000 properties, and these properties are starting at $100. So we'll look at that here at the end of the webinar once we get through these slides with some pretty good opportunities. Let's get through this information as quick as we can so we can spend some time looking at some of the upcoming auctions, because there's just so many cool things taking place. Okay, so each county is going to have its own website with tutorials and property information similar to Real Auction. You're going to have the introduction, the question and answers, the documents, and then of course click there to register. Once you've registered, you're going to just fill out your basic information. You can type in your username and password and go ahead and log into the site. Now once you log into the site, it's going to have all of the auction information. We're going to see the liens listed down here. We're going to have all of the auction details listed here as far as how many properties are being auctioned, what type of auction it is, when it starts. We're going to have the W-9 over here, and then also, of course, the bidding activity over here as well. And so once we log in, we're going to, of course, go through all this information. We're going to fill out the W-9 form, and then we can go ahead and search for tax lien certificates. Now we can search using different criteria. We can search between different amounts. And so what I'd like to do, or what I usually do, is I'll search between a face amount. So maybe I'm looking for tax liens between $1,000 to $2,000. I'll go ahead and type in $1,000 to $2,000, and I'll search the tax lien certificates that way. Because some of these auctions, if they're using this, may be, they may have tons of properties available. They may have, this auction right here. This is, an auction from a few years ago, but it had 34,000 properties or tax lien certificates available in Maricopa County. So, 34,000 tax liens, that's going to be a lot of work for you to try to go through and review each one of those tax liens and try to find property. And so the best way to narrow that down is to narrow it down by price. Narrow down whatever your investment amount is. You're going to narrow that list down and then start researching tax lien certificates within that price. With the list, it's going to have the parcel number and the lien amount. And then to find out more about the property, we're going to go ahead and click on the parcel number. So once we've clicked on the parcel number, we can see the the list over here on the left-hand side. We go ahead and click on the parcel number. It's going to pull up the tax lien information. We're going to see the tax information, the property description, and then of course we have the assessor that we can click on, and then we have the aerial map as well, and then the amount of the tax lien certificate. If we click on the assessor's information, it's going to pull up the property records. We're going to see the site address, the owner's name, the improvement value, the land value, the total value, the property classification code, any sales price or when it was sold. They're also going to have the assessor's information, the tax information, so we can look to see if it has any past tax lien certificates. They also have the investor's information that'll have how many people have bidded on the tax lien, if anyone has bidded on it, when the auction ends, and then of course if you've bidded on it. And then they'll have the owner information that'll go over the property owner's details. So each one of the tax liens will have some pretty good information that you can look at to help determine if it's a tax lien certificate that you're interested in. Okay, SRI Auctions. This is a newer company. They primarily offer Indiana tax liens and tax deeds. They also have a couple of other states that they're looking at or getting started with, but they're a little bit smaller. They offer Indiana tax liens or deeds. They have had Colorado tax liens in the past, and then they've offered Arizona before in the past too, and then they also offer Florida over-the-counter tax liens. But usually it's going to be Indiana is their primary clients. You're going to go ahead and register. You can see you just put in your basic information. Once you've registered, you're going to be given a username and password, and then from there you can go ahead and log in and start bidding on the individual properties. So every week we're finding new online auctions. These auctions may be handled or conducted by the county, but most of them are going to use some type of online provider to assist them. As more online auctions are available, there's going to be more opportunity to purchase tax liens or deeds for home. These states can include California, Michigan, New York, Washington, Idaho. We're continually finding new online auctions, and if there's any new ones come up, we make them available to you on the website so you can see where they are, you can see what auctions are taking place, and then of course you can click on the link to pull up the online auction website. A couple of the other ones that we're not going to go through is Civic Source. They offer online auctions in Louisiana. TaxSale.info is one that's coming up very quickly. They offer all the Michigan tax sale properties. New York auction bids. They offer online auctions in New York. There's also Haroff Group. They too auction New York tax deeds. TaxLienBids.com. They offer online auctions in Maryland and Pennsylvania. Okay, so that's online auctions. Let's quickly go through over-the-counter, and then we'll use the rest of the time to start looking at some of the upcoming auctions. The over-the-counter tax deeds or over-the-counter investing. Over-the-counter is a term used to describe tax liens or deeds that are available directly from the county. This is also referred to as assignment purchasing. Essentially what over-the-counter tax lien and deed investing is the tax liens or the tax deed properties that didn't sell at the auction. So they're going to have their auction each year. Let's say they don't sell a certain amount of those tax liens or tax deed properties. After the auction, these are properties, tax liens, or tax deeds that you can purchase directly from the county. And so after the sale has taken place, you can contact the county and purchase these over-the-counter tax lien certificates or these tax deed properties directly from them. So you're not going to be bidding against other investors. You can just purchase it directly from the county usually for the delinquent tax lien amount. This is a tax lien certificate that was sent to me recently by a student that they purchased. It's a nice single-family home on a nice lot right there on the lake. This lake also connects to other lakes, and this tax lien was actually purchased over the counter. They found this tax lien in the over-the-counter list. They were able to purchase it, and the property has a value between $275,000 to $325,000, earning an 18% interest rate. Good investment. How are the over-the-counter tax liens created and eventually offered? Well, first of all, a standard tax sale is conducted. Some of the tax liens or deeds that aren't sold to investors, these tax liens or deeds are either put back on the books to be offered at the next sale, or they're offered directly to the public. When they're offered directly to the public, that's over-the-counter investing. What are the advantages? Well, first of all, no travel required. You can purchase these many times from the comfort of your home. Less competition because you're not going to be competing against other bidders at the auction that increase the price or lower the interest rate return. There's a huge selection, and there's many different investment strategies that can be utilized through over-the-counter investing. So why did the tax lien or deed not sell at the auction? Many times I talk to investors that are under the impression that over-the-counter tax liens or deeds are leftover, worthless pieces of property. And that's really not the case. That doesn't mean that there's not going to be those type of properties on the list, but that doesn't mean that there's not going to be good properties as well. There's a number of different reasons why a tax lien or deed could not be offered. A tax lien or deed may not be sold at the auction than it could be offered directly to the public. First of all, there could be more tax liens or deeds than investors have money at the auction. Bidder default, the winning bidder fails to pay for the tax liens or deeds. If a bidder doesn't pay for their tax liens or deeds after they purchase them, then they're going to get put back on the book. There could be a mistake in the original offering. But really, many times is that there's more tax liens or deeds available than there is money at the auction. That's the primary reason why there's over-the-counter tax liens or tax deed properties for sale, is because there may be $2 million worth of real estate there as far as delinquent taxes, and there's only $1 million worth of money there for the investors. There's going to be leftover tax liens or tax deeds that didn't get purchased. So how does over-the-counter investing work? Well, first of all, the county is going to put together an available list of any of the tax liens or tax deeds that didn't get sold at the auction. This list can be obtained by contacting the county directly. It may be on their website. Of course, we have them on Secrets of Tax Lien Investing as well. Over-the-counter lists can range in size from just a few properties to literally thousands of separate tax lien certificates, or even tax deeds in some areas. There's some tax deed lists that range in the thousands as well. The investor conducts the usual due diligence. So you're going to go through the same due diligence process that you would with the normal tax lien or tax deed that you're going to purchase in auction. You're going to find out what the value is. You're going to do research on it. Then from there, if you decided that you want to purchase the tax lien, you're going to contact the county and make payment arrangements. Sometimes in fact, a lot of times there's over-the-counter online auctions that are available. In fact, some of the online auctions like Grant Street Group, like Real Auction that we looked at, actually offer their over-the-counter tax liens on the same website. So after the auction took place, like in May, Florida had their tax lien auctions. where they sold all their tax lien certificates, and now here they've just recently opened up their websites for over-the-counter tax lien investing. So you can go through and research each of the tax liens, and you can purchase those tax liens directly off the auction website, and it's very, very similar. So you're just going to go through that same process. Once you've purchased the tax lien, then they're going to send you out the tax lien certificate, or you're going to be registered the tax lien. If it's a tax deed, they're going to send you out the deed to the property. So what type of properties can be purchased through over-the-counter investing? Well, single-family homes, commercial property, commercial and residential building lots, raw land, valuable pieces of property. Well, what type of properties do you want to avoid? Well, the number one is some type of useless and unvaluable land. That's really what you want to avoid. I mean, land is a great investment. In fact, I have investors that will only purchase land because they don't want to deal with the headache of some type of structured property. Land has a high value. It's easy to sell. It's, they don't have to worry about showing the property. They can put a sign in the property, and they'd rather have a $100,000 lot than a $100,000 home any day, because that lot value is not going to be dictated by a leaky roof or termites or whatever else may come across. That property is going to be completely dictated by just the value itself. It's going to be easier to sell, and so don't be afraid to invest into land. You're just making sure that it's valuable land, that there's a use to the land. So the type of properties you can avoid are irregular building lots. If it's 2 feet by 100 feet, it's probably not a very good property for you to purchase, because there's not a lot you can do with it. Land with no value. If you're looking at a property in the middle of the desert in Arizona that has nothing but rattlesnakes and sagebrush, and it's worth $500, or $1,000, it's probably not a good property to purchase, because there's not a lot you can do with it, and it doesn't have a high value. You can also avoid properties with easements. Easements aren't always necessarily going to be a deal breaker, because there's a lot of properties that are always going to have easements of some sort. But any type of easement that completely affects your ability to use the property, like that drainage ditch, for example, from my story about the investors that bidded against each other at the auction, that drainage ditch, even though it was in a great area, a sizable piece of property, that easement completely hindered what you could do with the property, so it had very little value as far as an investment point of view. Then, of course, commercial land with environmental issues, which is really pretty rare. You're not going to find a ton of property with environmental issues, and it's easy to check, but it's not something that you're going to come across very often. I've only had a couple that have went through there. Okay. So as far as key points, the key point for investing into over-the-counter tax liens for interest rate returns is to invest in tax liens that are more likely to redeem. Because you're looking for a long-term investment, you can also invest in states that have a longer-term investment period or redemption period. Also, after buying the first lien, you're going to get the opportunity to buy additional years' liens. And so if you purchase a tax lien certificate and there's the tax lien, the property owner doesn't pay their property taxes the next year, you can have the option of purchasing that tax lien directly to the county before it ever goes to the sale. What type of properties to look for? Obviously, any type of residential properties, commercial properties, commercial buildings, buildable residential and commercial lots are great properties. Mobile home lots, really any type of valuable real estate is a real estate that we want to look at. Why invest in over-the-counter deeds? They can be the fastest way to get a return on your investment. You can buy and then hold, where you hold on to the property for a while as it increases in value. You can turn around and sell or rent the property for residual income. There are thousands of tax deeds available in many different states across the country. Also, with more tax deeds going to auction than ever before, there's going to be more opportunity for leftover tax deeds. These tax deeds can be purchased for the back taxes, and it can range in price from 5 to 15% of the property's value. So the one thing about tax deeds or over-the-counter tax deeds is you're not going to be bidding up the price. You're just essentially going to pay off those delinquent taxes and become the property's owner. So as far as acquire property, what are some of the techniques that I can use? You can buy tax liens that are already into the redemption period. That way you can start the foreclosure process quickly, and they have a lot higher chance of you actually acquiring the property than a normal taxing certificate. This is also where we talk about our secondary market liens. As we go and purchase secondary market, these secondary market tax liens, we do the research and find tax liens that are already past the redemption period, that are foreclosure ready, and then we can also look to see which ones have a higher chance of you acquiring the property. Depending on your investment strategy. If your strategy is to just get paid back the interest rate return, that's no problem. We have tax certificates that can do that. And if your objection is, or your desire is to try to acquire property, then we can look at tax certificates that increase that chance of acquiring the property, give you a better shot than you normally would of actually acquiring a property, and it's really just going to be a numbers game at that point. You can buy redemption deeds, like in Texas, struck off tax deeds, that you can get the deed after the redemption period is passed. And then, of course, you can buy tax deeds that were left over after the tax deed auction. There's lots of different names that the counties will use for over-the-counter properties. Sometimes they're going to be called the list of land, over-the-counter, struck off, state tax land, respiratory properties, upset bid properties. These are some of the common names that will be used for tax liens and tax deeds. Here are some of the tax deeds that list or states that we have available on the website. Here are some of the tax lien states. Redemption deeds are really just Texas is the only one that offers them. Okay, so we went ahead and got through this. What we're going to do for the last half an hour is we're going to look at some of the upcoming auctions that are taking place. Let me go ahead and answer a few of these questions. Okay, are there some example of areas to look for in due diligence? Great question. We're going to go through and do some basic due diligence right now on upcoming properties, upcoming tax sale properties. As far as getting into the full due diligence of exactly what's needed in all of the different steps, that's a whole nother webinar. And because you're on the line, you're going to be able to log into the website where we're going to have upcoming webinars and past webinars that get specifically into those due diligence processes. But we're going to go through the basic due diligence right now. So we're going to go through, look at a property, we're going to check its value, we're going to look at the county records, we're going to go through and review the property, see if we can get close or street side images of the property. So we're going to go through some of the basic due diligence right now. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go to Secrets of Tax Lien Investing. If you aren't already a member, you can either do two things. You can go ahead and register right here by clicking on this 30-day guest pass. From there, you can put in your information. We can also send you out username and password as well. But once you are a member, you can go ahead. After you've signed up for the guest pass, you can go ahead and type in your username and password, log in. Once you log in, you're going to be taken to the Member Center. So this is where we're going to have all of our tax sale training. You can click on the Training Center. In the Training Center is where we're going to have the weekly webinar, the members webinar. So this is going to be a webinar on Wednesday nights that's available for investors. There's a question I can see just come up. Do you have the replay available? Yes, the replay will be available here within the training videos. So if you were to click on the training videos, you're going to see the training video at the week at the very top. Just waiting to come up. I don't know why it's not coming up. But then down here below, you're going to have any of the webinars, including, you know, today's webinar will be listed right here. You know, it's just by date, and so you can click on that and review any of the past webinars. Then short webinars or videos down here below. We also have the coaches blog here. You can sign up for the weekly webinar by clicking here. The news center, the podcast center, training ebooks, investor forums, and then our YouTube channels down here below. We also have our auction calendar, where you'll have the auction calendar of the different auctions that are coming up. You can go ahead and click by week view and click on any of the counties and review their auction list or their online auction. So we can see here's, you know, Manatee's an online tax deed, and then, you know, Collier is a live tax deed. So this is going to be an online auction, a live auction, tax deed. They'll say tax lien. Here's an online tax lien. So we're going to click on any of those to go to the auction website or to download the tax sale list. Of course, we have our over-the-counter database here, our state profiles here, and our online auctions. Before we get into the online auctions, we're going to go ahead and look at the profiles real quick. We're going to have the investor profiles. These are, you know, 8 different profiles that are going to help you determine exactly what type of investment strategy that you're interested in, and then also the states where you can use that strategy. So if you decided, hey, I'm a tax deed auction investor, it's going to go through and explain the strategies involved with that, and it's also going to have a list of states that you can click on over here to the side to review this state profile. So let's say we were interested in Florida, we go ahead and click on Florida, and it's going to go through all the details. We can see state overview. It's going to talk about tax liens, tax deeds, the rate of return, the bidding types, the redemption period, the deed information, over-the-counter information, foreclosure information, auction dates, online auction information. Really going to go through all kinds of information on the state so that you're going to have a pretty good idea of how the state handles this auction. And then from there, you can start researching individual counties. So what we're going to do for this is we're going to go ahead and look at some of the online auctions that are coming up. We can see we have the online tax lien auctions, the online tax deed, the redemption deed. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and look at some of the online tax deed auctions that are coming up. So we can see once we click on the online tax deed auctions, we have California starting. We can see the different auctions that are coming up. For this particular example, I want to show you an auction that's going to be coming up in the San Francisco area. Okay, I'm just looking over some of the questions. Okay, we have a question about customer service. I have a lot of questions. You know, I don't have a customer service line. We used to have it in our past. Once we, you know, right now we're completely offering free training, and so, you know, hiring coaches to answer all the questions as far as free training is just not something we can do until we start having some type of monthly service. Once we get that set up, we'll have a hotline coaches. But you know, finding good tax sale coaches that can just be there to answer hotline questions do cost some money. So that's something we're going to set up here in the future. But you can also, of course, email me. I'll try to answer as many questions as I can for you. But a good question is something that we're building. Really what essentially has happened is a couple of years ago we quit working with the seminar companies and are just doing it completely on our own. And so I'm starting a brand new company to offer tax sale investing training and information. And so that's kind of what we're doing here in setting up people with these guest pass memberships. So let's go ahead and get into the to this auction. So first of all, let me go ahead and actually go back to the home page so you can see it from the beginning. Here is the Bid for Assets website. We can see the different storefronts over here. We can see the U.S. Marshal Service, federal, state, and local. Then down here below, we can see county tax sale. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. It's going to take us to the county tax sale page. We can see the different auctions that are coming up. So we can see Modoc, July 11th to the 14th. The auction's already over. We can see Thurston, Washington on July 27th to the 28th. Pierce County from August 3rd to the 4th. Tulare, Los Angeles, San Mateo, Monterey, and some of the other counties that are going to be having auctions. So what we're going to do for this is we're going to go ahead and check out the San Mateo auction that's taking place on August 8th through the 11th. We can see that there's 102 tax defaulted properties available, and we're also going to see that there's 202 tax defaulted properties. We can see the bidding starts at $1,500. As we continue to scroll down, we're going to see the California law, the county terms of sale, the property list in Excel form and PDF form, and then we also have these lists down here below. Now, this list is broken up into what we call batches, and what a batch is it's just a certain amount of properties that are going to start at a certain time and end at a certain time. So instead of having all the properties end at 12 o'clock or end at noon or end at 10 o'clock in the morning, whatever it is, they're going to stagger those out in groups. And so it's just a group of properties auctioned off at one time. So here we can see, this particular batch may be 10 properties in each batch or 20 properties. Just depends on the batch. And we can see that there's a lot of different batches. Now, if we were to go ahead and click on one of these batches, we can see some photos of the property which make it a little bit nicer, but a lot of times they're not going to have that information available. And so to try to go through each one of these batches is really going to take quite a bit of time to find properties that we're interested in looking at. These photos do help because it at least gives us a better idea of what there might be. What I'll usually do is I'll go ahead and download the Excel list. That way I can view all of the properties at one time. So once I've downloaded the Excel list, let's zoom it up a little bit so you can see better. Oh, that was quite a big zoom. Let's do 150%, it's a little easier. Okay, so here's the tax sale list that we're looking at. And we can see some information. First of all, we're going to have the auction ID here. The APN is the parcel number. Here's also the legal description, the auction end date, the minimum bid amount, the property address, the city, and the zip code. And then last is the property owner. Now, many times they're going to have the assessed value in the list. This particular list doesn't. But what I like to do is I like to kind of condense my list down to the properties I'm interested in. So, you can always download a new list. So I'm going to erase things that I'm not necessarily need at this point as I research the list. So I'm going to go ahead and erase the legal description. I'm going to erase the auction end date. I may erase this information, the owner information. I could use that, but really I'm just trying to condense this list down. Because we don't have the assessed value here, usually if there was an assessed value, let's say there was an assessed value right here, I could look at that minimum bid amount and determine, okay, and then look over the assessed value and see, okay, what is that bid to value ratio? What is that opening bid amount versus the property's assessed value? With this particular example, we're just going to be able to use that opening bid amount plus the property address. So I can see this very first property here has $27,000 opening bid. And we can see that it has an address, 220 Ball Park Circle. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and click on this property, and we can see here that we're looking at a single family home. We can see that it has an opening bid amount of $27,000. We can see that here's the auction open date and auction end date. And then down here below, we can click on the parcel image, we can click on the parcel map, And then we also have the address listed right here. So we're going to go ahead and click on the parcel image. Now we can see this is really a pretty nice property here, a pretty nice single-family home. Now from here, many times what I'll do is I'll try to get a street view of it, just to get a better idea, another view of the property. Now this photo is actually probably a newer photo taken for the auction, which is nice, but a lot of times you're not going to have that information. So if I don't have that information, I'm going to go ahead and check out the property on just something even as simple as Google Maps or Google Earth. So we can see the properties right here. Here's kind of the back look of the property. And then of course it's, we're looking at the other front side of the property as it goes down this kind of small private drive. Also, one thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to check to see what type of market value this property has. Now Zillow isn't going to be a guarantee this is what it's worth, but it does give us a better idea. And then in addition to that, we can use a site like Zillow to do a comparative market analysis, because Zillow is really just a data collection company, and so they're going to collect properties that have sold within that area or currently for sale that are similar to the property that we're looking at, that we can use to do a comparative market analysis on it. So from here, we're going to go ahead and take that address and we're going to type it into Zillow, and we're going to see what we come up with. Okay, so here we're looking at a property starting at a $27,000 opening bid. And guys, I mean, these are some pretty incredible examples. I don't want you to think that the bid to value ratio is always this incredible as far as how much the opening bid is versus the market value. But here we're looking at a market value of $1.2 million. 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath, just under 3,000 square foot home, valued at $1.2 million with a $27,000 opening bid. So we're looking here at a pretty incredible property. It looks like it rents out for about almost $5,000 a month. It was built in 1997. So obviously we're looking at a very, very nice property. And then of course, when we're looking at that bid to value ratio, we're looking at a $27,000 opening bid. Nice property. Because it has some of these photos, usually I just go down that entire list, but when it does have photos, it makes it a little bit nicer for looking up the property. So we can see here's the property we just looked at. We can see another property here that looks to have a home on it. $34,000 opening bid. We can click on the parcel image to get a better idea of it. So, of course, this home isn't in the same condition or the same, area or value as the other home, but we're still looking at a $34,000 opening bid. And let's go ahead and check and see what this property has a value for on Zillow.com. Okay, so even though we're looking at an older home here, guys, we're still looking at a property, and this is California real estate. I mean, you can't do this everywhere. Usually, we're looking at property values at anywhere from 50 to 200. But here we're looking at a property value for, $766,000. So $750,000. It's a 3-bedroom, 3-bath, just small property, just over 1,000 square feet, with an opening bid of $34,000. I mean, you just can't. That's what makes tax sale investing so sweet, is you just can't find, properties with the lower opening bid. Of course, it's probably not going to sell for $34,000. It's going to get bid up in price, but you can acquire properties for 10, 20, 30. Maybe some of these properties have a little bit higher competition, and maybe it sells for 40 or 50%. But still, kind of my general rule is that the higher the value of the property, the higher you can go up as far as the percentage of bid to value. So if I'm investing in a lower property that is only worth 10 grand, I'm going to try to get that property for 10 or 20%, because there's not as much profit to be made in a property that's only worth 10 grand. So if I'm looking at a building lot that's 10 grand, I'm going to try to get it for maybe 10%, 5%, maybe 15%, where I have some profit room to make a profit on a there's some room there to make a profit because you're looking at a lower value property. Now, if I'm looking at a property that's worth, $100,000 or $200,000, if I look at a property like this, for example, that's worth, $750,000, I may be willing to go up to 30 or 40 or maybe even 50% of its value, because even if I paid 50% of this property's value and acquire the property for, let's say, 300 grand, I would still have, 350, 400 grand of room there to make a profit. And so my rule is if the property is more value, you can go up higher in price as far as that bid to value ratio. You can pay higher value cost, maybe 30, 40, 50%. If the property is lower in value, you're going to want to lower that bid to value ratio as well. Try to get it for as cheap as 10, 15%. Don't go higher than that because there's not as much profit within that property. And so that's kind of the rule that I use as I'm evaluating property. We can see some other properties here as well. This looks like some type of it looks like actually a pretty big property. Let's look at a couple of others. And we can see these properties that are withdrawn. That means that it's no longer available. So here's a single family home. It's withdrawn. It's no longer available. Here's another single family home. I can see the picture of it. So it has a $38,000 opening bid. We have the address right there. We can go ahead and click on the parcel image. We can see, okay, it's an older single family, an older home. We could go ahead and search that property. And sometimes you're going to need to use a site like Google Earth because there's not going to be pictures of the property on the auction website. So we can use Google Earth. We can see it's this little property right here. We can look at the neighborhood. Really it's not a bad little neighborhood. I like to look at the neighborhood, give me an idea of where the property is located. Really this looks like it might be a little bit smaller home on a nicer street. That's a good thing. From there, we're going to go ahead and search it on Zillow just to get an idea of the property value. Now, if I'm planning on bidding on one of these properties, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a comparative market analysis on it. I'm going to find homes that have sold recently within this area that are very similar to determine exactly what I'm willing to pay. So if I find 3 homes that have sold within this neighborhood, then I'll figure out what they sold for per square foot, and I'll know that my home will sell for a similar type price per square foot. So, this home, we can see it has an estimated value of $1.3 million. 3-bedroom, 1 bath, just under 1,700 square feet. It was built in 1936. We can also go down here below, click on the comparable homes, and we can find homes for sale that we can use to determine our comparative market analysis there. So again, we're looking at a property here with an opening bid amount of $38,000 and an assessed value of, not an assessed value, a market value of 1.3. And let's say that this is even off. Maybe this property is only worth $800,000. That's given almost 500 grand. That's given $500,000 in the price that Zillow says it's worth versus the price that it is. You're still looking at a property that would be worth a huge amount of money versus that opening bid price of $38,000. You see here's another single family home. Starts with $23,000. Let's go through some of these real quickly just to kind of get an idea of some of the properties on the list. So $23,000 opening bid, estimated value of $726,000, 3-bedroom, 1 bath, just under 1,000 square feet. Another nice property coming up for auction. Looks like a nice property right there on the waterway. We'd do some more investigation from here. If we're going to do additional due diligence, would go into the county records and would search the county records in the property assessor's office. There's what's called a parcel search tool, and would use that parcel search tool to take this APN number, this parcel number, and search the property records. We don't have time to go into it. In fact, we're already at our time limit, but let's go through and let's look at a couple of more. Let's see, here's some type of either a home or commercial. What I'm looking for is a property that I was looking at and did a video on. Here's another some type of structured property. I'm looking for one in particular. Here's another single-family home. It's not the one I'm looking for, but we'll go ahead and check the market value quickly. So here's one, you know, it's worth $565,000. And then see these dots here, these are homes that have recently sold. You know, here's one that sold for $580,000. We can see it's just a few doors down. Be a great home to use as a comparative market analysis. Here's another one not too far away, $879,000, $535,000. We could use these properties as an idea of what this property may be valued at. Let me do this. Let's go ahead and pull up this. And here's the property we want to look at. We can see it's $233,000. I don't know why I couldn't see it on the list that we were looking at. Maybe it didn't have the picture on the front. So here we're looking at a property right here. We can see it has a $233,000 opening bid, so a pretty high opening bid amount. Let's go ahead and click on that parcel image. Going to pull up the property record. We can see here is a very nice big custom single-family home. Just looking through some of the questions. Okay, so looking at a nice custom single-family home here. Let's go ahead and do this. Let's check to see what the property value is. Now we know it has a high opening bid amount. You know, we're looking at a $233,000 opening bid amount. But we're looking here at a property with over a $4 million value. You know, $4.1 million. We can see it's up here on the hills. You know, we can see properties around it. Here's one for 7.96, 11 million. You know, 7.3, 8.4. So we're looking at a home in the top of the hills, valued at over $4 million with a $233,000 opening bid. You just can't beat those type of prices. You know, we'll see what happens when they go to sell, or if they go to sell. But there's definitely, there's some pretty good examples as far as the type of properties that can be available through tax sale investing. And we can go through and look at any of these individual counties, and we're going to see exactly what they're coming up for. We can go ahead and download that list. Also, one thing I want to show you guys is just pretty cool, is this is what's called a resale. Now, what a resale is after the properties have already been auctioned or offered for sale, then you can go ahead, and areas like California will sometimes have what's called a resale. Michigan will have what's called a resale. And in a resale, they're going to start the property auctions at a set amount. So, maybe in the past, they've offered it for sale and it used to have a $10,000 opening bid, but nobody bought it. Now they're going to resell the property with an opening bid of $100 or $500. They're going to have a set opening bid amount. And with this auction coming up in San Bernardino, we can see that there's, they have auctions 5 days in a row. And we can see there's 375 properties, 373, 374, 376, and 233 properties on the last day of the 7th. And all of these properties are going to start with an opening bid of $100. And so this could be, a great opportunity because there's going to be over 1,000 properties auctioned off over these 5 days, all starting with an opening bid of $100. And so what I'm going to do is I'll usually go ahead and download that list because, you can see that there's not a ton of information that they have available right here. They're just going to have that opening bid amount, the close date, and then that ID number and the parcel number. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and download that list so we can get a better idea of what's available. So here's the tax sale list. Now from here, what I'll usually do is I'm going to separate and look and see what information is available, and then of course kind of narrow down this list as well. I talk about in some of the webinars you can watch about the quick glance method and the quick glance method of shortening a list down and evaluating a list. You can go ahead and watch that video. It's available in the training center. But essentially what we're doing is we're going to see what's available on the list. Okay, so here's the tax sale list. Let me go ahead and change the view so easier to see for you guys. And I know we've already gone up to the point of our 2-hour webinar. Usually do 2-hour boot camp, but we're going to spend just a few more minutes with you so we can go through and look at least a few more. Okay, so here's the auction list. There's some information I really don't need right now for this particular auction. I'm not going to worry about the ID number. I'm not going to worry about the legal description because essentially what we're doing is we're just looking for properties that we can do some additional due diligence on. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click that because there's nothing. Exemptions. Opening bid we don't need. Best bid hasn't been done yet. Auction date's not important. Okay, so now we've narrowed down this list a little bit. Now we're going to look at some the basic information that's available. So we're going to see, first of all, of course, the street address. That's going to let us know that the property is, is a property that we can drive by, that there's, that it's feasible to look at. From there, and then of course we can also use that address to do a quick Google map of the property or Google Earth view and see exactly what the property is. We can also use this APN number to search the property in the property records, and then of course we're going to look at this this land value, the improvement value, and the total assessed value. So with this particular list, we're going to narrow it down, and we know that all the properties start at $100. So usually we'd have to look at that opening bid amount because that's what's going to determine what properties we can invest into. If you have $10,000 to invest, then you're not going to spend time looking at properties that are $11,000 on up because you have $10,000 to invest. And so that would help eliminate that list. So we would eliminate any property that's over $11,000, and we would focus on properties probably between $5,000 to $10,000 because that's at kind of that price range that you have to invest. Now, with all these properties starting at $100 opening bid, that can definitely open up the process because you're only looking at a $100 bid for the individual property. So what we're going to look at is this address, because that means that we can drive by the property, and then also this this value here, the total assessed value. So here we can see, here's a property with a $25,000 land value, a $35,000 improvement value, a $61,000 total assessed value. Here's a property, with a $50,000 land value and $280,000 improvement value. Here's one with the $333,000 improvement value. So what we can look at is these properties over here on the side, and then we can use this information over here that's available to look up any of these individual properties. So let's look at one real quick and see if we can pull something up. I also like to, so there we can see 1920 Menton Avenue. We know that it's in Menton, California, because it's right underneath here, the town. It's Menton. So we're going to go ahead and click there. Now we're not going to be able to get a street view with this property. What we can see is this property right here. So let's go ahead and take this address and let's see if it qualifies as a single-family home. Now, Zillow.com is not going to have commercial properties on here. It's just going to have residential. Okay, but we were able to pull up this property. No, that's not the property. That's 1020 Kimball. That's weird. For some reason, this 1920 Menton Avenue is pulling up this Kimberly property, which I am not sure why that's happening. Huh, that's weird. Anyway, let's see if we can look at any others. Let's go ahead and look at this property right here. Okay, so here's it looks like a little home. We can see the overhead view right here. See, it's a little house. Then we can also see the street view right here. So we're looking at this little home right here. You know, it looks to be, it may be abandoned, it may not be, but either way, when looking at a $100 opening bid, suddenly, you know, usually I'd probably say, oh, you know, that may be a property you want to avoid, but what we're looking for and what we're always looking for is price, and then also what the property is valued at. So let's go ahead and do a Google Zillow search real quick, and we can see this property is worth $100,000. So even in its condition, and you can see that's probably pretty accurate because the homes here on the street that are nicer are worth quite a bit more. We can also see a home here that's for sale close by. So that's probably a pretty good accurate value of about $100,000. And then of course we're looking at this property here, $100,000 opening bid. I mean $100,000 value. Well, at $100 opening bid, suddenly this property becomes a lot more interesting. So even if you purchase this property for, you know, 2 or 3 or 5 or even 10,000, there's still huge amounts of profit to be made on this property, even though it isn't, you know, the most glowing, beautiful property like some of the ones that we looked at in San Francisco. What we're looking for is there value, which there is. $100,000 is value to me. And then what is the price that we're going to pay for it? Now, I wouldn't recommend paying $50,000 or $60,000 for this property, but paying 10 or 20, you know, there's still a huge amount of profit in there. Even if you turn around and sold it for 50 and you purchased it for 20, you could make $30,000 of profit on a property like this, no problem. And of course, we could go through this entire list and look at any of these properties. We could search the parcel numbers, and there's 5 different other lists like this that have 300 properties on it. So, you know, another great opportunity, another avenue of tax sale investing, and taking advantage of these secondary, of these resale type properties. Okay, let's see if we have any other questions. I think I might have erased some of them somehow. Okay, so let's do one more thing real quick, and we're going to go through and we're going to look at some of the Florida upcoming auctions. We can see the Florida auctions here, also the Michigan sales. You know, a lot of people say, you know, don't invest in Michigan, but really, you know, I tweeted out something last week about one of the most underappreciated markets, undervalued markets in the country is actually Detroit. And there's areas that you don't want to purchase, but then there's also areas that are revitalizing, even in a city like Detroit, which everyone says completely stay away from. And really what we're looking for is price. Price is the most important thing. And there's areas in Michigan that have some pretty good auctions and pretty good prices. In addition to that, Michigan's very unique as far as what the information they provide. The county will actually foreclose on the property, and they'll give you a lot of good notes. They'll let you know the condition of the property. They may have photos of the inside and the photos of the outside, and so you're actually going to get a ton of information about each one of the properties. If there's a renter in the property, they're going to let you know, and so it's actually some pretty good information. Here we're just looking at the basic information. Old Riverside Party Store, now apartments. And then of course we can click on more details, and they're going to have additional pictures. They're going to have any notes that they take. They're going to go through and do notes on each one of these properties. Here we can see a 2-story house beyond need of TLC. So this house needs some serious work. And so that's going to be the Michigan upcoming auctions. Here's New York, Washington, and then right here is going to be the Florida tax deed auctions. So let's go ahead and click on a county. I'm trying to remember what county I showed the other day that had some pretty good properties. Well, let's just go ahead and look at Lee just for fun. So we're going to go ahead and click on the auction calendar. And here we can see that they had properties auctioned on the 7th. They had properties auctioned on the 14th. And they have property auction next Tuesday on the 21st. And then also on the 28th as well. Let's go ahead and click on the 21st and see what properties there are. So this is an example of the Real Auction website and the Real Auction software. Here's the auction calendar. We're going to see, first of all, the type, tax deed, case number, certificate number, opening bid amount, parcel ID, property address, and assessed value. So as we're looking at this information, we're going to be able to go down this list. And this is something, as you get more and more experienced investing in properties, investing in tax sales, you're going to be able to look at a list very quickly and make a determination if it's a property you want to do some additional due diligence on. So when I'm looking at this first property, I see it has a $900 opening bid, but it's only worth $1,500. Now this assessed value is probably pretty low. Most of the real estate, the land in Florida, is very underassessed versus what the actual market value is. So the market value on this property may be $5–10 grand. The assessed value, they many times lower that assessed value, and especially on properties that are full-on legal building lots, many times they're going to be underassessed versus what it's actually worth. But what we can look at is we're going to look at that opening bid amount. So here we see an opening bid amount of $8,000, property value $100,000. Well, and then we also, of course, see an address listed here as well. Well, that's a pretty good bid to value ratio. We're going to click on that link, and we can see here a nice single-family home. Picture of the property right there. We can see the overhead view right here. We can see the owner information, the site address. We can see it's a single-family residency, has an assessed value of $116,000. We can see over here it has 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, about 1,500 square feet, built in 1983. Then down here below, we can click on any of these to pull up and look at any information. We can see it's sold in 2008, sold in 2000. We can click on any of this information, location information, Cape Carroll, longitude, latitude, and any of this information. But we can see here that we're really looking at a pretty good property. So what we're going to first do is we're going to go ahead and take that address, go to our Google Maps, and see if we can get a current street site. So even though this photo has a property, and we've kind of looked at some that do have properties, we're going to check Google Earth as well. Now also, one thing I want to look at when I'm looking at this is I want to look down here on the bottom, because it's going to have the image capture date. Now that's going to be a good indication of how long, or how long ago it was the picture was taken. We can see up here as well, 2011. So this is actually an older picture of the property. And so if I'm investing in this property, I probably want to get a newer current picture of the property before I, shell out my money. But that'll give us a clue of when that picture was taken. We'll see it, this is an older one. Sometimes you'll see them. I've been looking in Florida last night, and the pictures were taken within the last 6 months. So that's going to be a more current photo. But at least we have an idea of how old the photo is by looking there. Either way, we're really looking at a pretty nice home from this photo here, from this photo here. Then what we're going to do is we're just going to do a quick Zillow search and see what the property value looks like. So we see the estimated here is $170,000, 1983. Same information we know, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. But overall, we're really looking at a pretty nice property here, especially when we're looking at that $10,000 opening bid amount. Looks to be in a pretty good area, pretty good market. So overall, an overall pretty good investment. We've already gone over, so we're going to go ahead and look at 1 or 2 more properties, and then we'll go ahead and call it a day. Let you get back to doing whatever your Saturday consists of. So, okay, we can see another property here. It's only a $3,000 opening bid, $2,961. It's worth $46, but that has a pretty good bid to value ratio, so I want to click on it. Okay, so we can see it's here. It's a nice, looks like a nice little condominium of some sort. We have the address right here. Let's go ahead and do a quick Zillow search and see what the property is valued at. Looking here at about a $73,000 value. We can also see it has a rent estimate of about $1,000 a month. Well, if you were able to acquire this property for, even, as an opening bid of $3,000, but even if you acquire it for $10,000, went it out for $1,000 a month, this property is going to pay for itself within 10 months, and then from then on, you're going to be getting straight return on your investment. That's going to be such a difference than spending, $70,000 for it, getting a mortgage on it, and maybe taking money out of pocket each month just to cover the bills. That's one of the great things about tax deed investment. And we could, of course, go through this list. And really what I'd recommend is, even if you're not ready to start investing right now, go through this process and start researching some of these properties at any of these online auctions. Here you can see a property, $6,000 opening bid, worth $111. Looks like to be a nice newer condominium. Here's one for $9,000 worth $105. Looks to be a nice single-family home. Looks like the grass hasn't been cut in a while, which is probably part of the reason. There's some of these homes that we find in Florida where investors purchased them thinking it was an investment, then the market turned, and they didn't have the money to continue paying for it, so they're losing their property. They may have never even been lived in. Here's another nice single-family home. Opening bid amount $5,000, worth $56 as far as the assessed value. We can go ahead and search that site address and see what the market value is. And we're looking at a 3-bedroom, 2-bath worth $95,000. So overall, a pretty nice home, pretty good property that you could purchase in the tax deed auction. So again, I want to thank you guys for being on the call today. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you got a little excited about getting started in tax sale investing. It's really something I believe in. As I mentioned, I first heard about tax sale investing in 1999 as a brand new young real estate agent. Since that time, I've dedicated myself to learning the strategy, using the strategy, teaching the strategy, and I'm excited to have you guys part of the program. For registering for this webinar, you guys are all going to get the free 30-day guest pass to the member center of the website. I'm going to go ahead and set that up. I used to have an older website that we used with all of the training seminar companies. I closed that one down. And I'm starting this new site. Of course, I've had Secrets of Tax Lien Investing since 2006, I believe, but we haven't had it as a full training site till now. And so we're setting up some new things. We're constantly adding new training, new features, new benefits to the website. We really plan on creating a community of tax sale investors, helping each other to create success in tax sales. Create success in our life. There's not a better way, in my opinion, for acquiring property than through tax sale investing. With tax lien certificates, why put your money, put your money in the hands of somebody hoping that they are going to be able to make a profit, make some type of return on it, when you can put it in your own hand and you can go out there and purchase tax lien certificates at a guaranteed interest rate, you're not going to wonder, am I going to make money this year? And get your statement at the end of the year and see that you made 2% on your money. Or if your money's in something like a bank making, not even 0.5%, versus putting in some type of tax lien certificate investment where you have a high guaranteed interest rate backed on a great piece of property. Or if you're looking to become a real estate investor, why not get started with tax deed investing, where you're buying property for many times 10, 20, 30% of its value, with the turnaround to flip the property or to rent the property out. There's really not a better way to get started in tax sale investing. For those of you that haven't registered, I'll go ahead and email you out the registration information. Once you go ahead and log in, you'll put in your username and password, and then you can also go up here to the Create Account section, and you can change your password by clicking here. You can edit your account information, so if you want to include your phone number, your address, any of that information, you can do that. Or you can also register and put all your information by going and clicking on this 30-day pass here, and then you put in your information, click submit, and once you do that, so if you want to register and you haven't registered, you can go ahead and register right after the sale, and it'll go ahead and set you up with an account so you can start reviewing the information now. Otherwise, I'm going to have to go through and create individual accounts. And so depending on who already has the account set up, if you haven't, you can go ahead and register for it and then start researching any of these member information right here. In addition, you can click on the profile information, start reviewing the investor profiles, the state profiles, and all of the tools that are available here on the website. So again, I want to welcome and thank everyone for being on the line. Appreciate you guys sticking with me. I guess we've been on the phone for almost 2.5 hours now, and so we've gone through a lot of information. Hopefully you understand the tax sale market better. You're a little bit more excited and ready to get going. So again, thank you guys, and have a great evening.